Hello, I'm an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. I'm not an expert or an official representative of anything or anybody. I just like knives. And for the last year, about once a week, you've been joining me on a tour through my collection of small folding pocket knives. A collection I've built up over a couple of decades. I'll remind you, I'm not buying a new knife every week. But I've enjoyed the company as you come and join me. Thanks for having a look. Today we're going to have a look at this little knife. This is a Vero Engineering Axon Mini. A long name. Where did that come from? Well, this is from a company called Vero Engineering, which is basically one guy, Joseph Vero, and I've admired their knives for a long time. They're unique design and really well made. And I had his original, or I don't know if it was his original, one of his original knives, this one, the Vero Synapse, for a long time. Liked it a lot. And he came out with a few smaller knives, and I do generally prefer smaller knives. This one, the Axon Mini, became available. Limited quantity runs, that sort of thing, wait for a drop and jump, but I was able to get my hands on one. And have decided I like it quite a lot, although it's a little unusual in some ways that we'll get into. I had to pre-order this and wait about 8 months to get it, by the way, so it was well worth the wait. So formally, Vero Engineering Axon Mini, and this is the natural micarta version. The mechanism, all of Vero's knives use a mechanism similar to this. It's what you'd call a thumb stud opening, except there's no stud. There's a recessed chamber, rectangular chamber in both sides of the blade, which you put your thumb in and use it to open it like a thumb stud. It's kind of a unique, interesting looking design, and with no stud, of course, nothing to get caught when you're slicing something. So anyway, we'll call it a thumb opening. It's running on bearings, and it is a traditional liner locking mechanism. You can flip this knife, but I never do. You can flip it with your thumb, which is hard, and I never do, but you can. We'll get to that. You can also front flip it. You see the shoulder of the blade extends slightly over the end of the scales, and so you can front flip. But front flippers scare me, and I never do that, literally never. Anyway, there's the mechanism. The size, this is a small knife. At 165 millimeters, considerably less than a pocket calculator. That's about 0.8 pocket calculators. And to compare it to a few other things, well, our standard is always, of course, the Mini Griptilian. So it's slightly smaller than a Mini Griptilian, about 5 millimeters smaller. It turns out to be exactly the same size as the Kaiser Feist. Quite a different looking knife, as you can see, but a lot thicker blade. But in length, it's exactly the same size as the Feist. And as a matter of fact, it's exactly the same size as the small Inkosi as well. Again, quite a different shape, but same length. Just to bring it back on screen, his larger knife that I have, the Synapse, this is a Synapse Gen 2, as you can see, is considerably larger. So this is a small knife. By the way, all of Joseph's knives are named after neuroscience. So this is the Synapse, the Axon, and there's also a neuron. I don't know why the neuroscience theme, but it's kind of cool. Anyway, the weight, well, being so small, you'd expect it to also be light, and it is at 68 grams. As an example, it's about 10% lighter than the small Inkosi. Quite a noticeable difference. So it's a small, light knife. The blade is interesting. It's just under 3 inches, for places that matters, 2.9 inches, M390 steel. Now, it is a sheep's foot blade, which is not, frankly, a blade shape I like. I really like traditional drop point blades. It looks unique. It has some useful properties. It has a completely straight cutting edge, and there are times when that's very useful, especially for shaving things. And it has a very angular point. So although I think they're a little odd looking, it is certainly distinctive, and has some advantages. So we'll talk more about that. The body on this knife is micarta on titanium, and can I get a view inside there? You can see, there we are. You can see the titanium is bored out for weight reduction. So it's a good combination of sort of stiffness and lightweight. The micarta is something we'll come back to several times. The micarta is very coarse. It's not fine sanded and it isn't lacquer covered. It's a very coarse, rough feeling and looking micarta. There is a clip. It is milled titanium. It's a shallow carry clip, as you can see. And it's sitting in a bit of a recess in the micarta, as you can see there. So it is definitely one side only clip. No lanyard hole. Ambidextrous opening, sure. You can open that with your thumb with either hand. You can open it with two hands. Even I can open it with my left hand with two hands. Closing, of course, being a liner lock, a little awkward for the left hand, although I'm sure lefties get good at that. But the clip, no, not movable to the other side. So let's say it's not an ambidextrous knife. And it's made in China. I believe these are made by Bestech. Whoever it is, kudos to them. It is really high quality manufacture. Just, I'm very impressed. Very close tolerances, good grind, really lovely manufacturing. So let's go through some likes and dislikes. What do I like? Well, I like quite a lot about this knife. First of all, it is unique. Honestly, nothing else in my collection looks like that. Now, one reason is I don't have any other sheep's foot blades, but it's not just the blade. The humped back, the rectangular thumb operator, the angles. It is truly unique, and that's kind of cool. It doesn't look like 100 other knives. After saying that, I'll mention there are several things that I'm going to list both in my like and my don't like list, which is, I guess, not entirely shocking. So let's start with the scales. The scales, the coarse micarta, are really nice. They're comfortable. There's a real coarse feeling there. So you get an incredible grip, and they feel sort of soft and casual, like putting your hands on worn blue jeans. They have a casual look, and they, of course, being micarta, it's absorbent. It will patina over time. You can see that's already starting to happen, developing some colors where my fingers naturally lie. So it will become a very personalized thing. So that's really neat. The mechanism is really nice. It's very smooth. Smooth, silent, smooth, almost effortless opening there. Good solid lock when it locks. You can open it slow or fast. There's slow. You can flick it open, although it is not easy for me to do. My big hands and small knife. You can do it one-handed or two-handed. Now the one hand does misfire occasionally, and that's nothing about the mechanism. It's that this is a small knife. My old arthritic hands just have trouble getting sort of compacted down to the size necessary to operate. See, there's a misfire to operate that thing. So a person in better shape and more flexible than me could probably flick this open very easily. I will say a four-finger flick works better for me than a thumb flick. So, honestly, when a knife opens nicely with one hand or with two hands, well, if it opens with two hands, I do that 90% of the time. Like, I just don't need one-handed opening. I just don't. And if it'll open slowly with one hand, I do that 90% of the time. There's really no need to flick a knife open. It's just fun on the knives where it works well. So I don't flick this one for fun, but it's a wonderful opening knife to just open up and cut things. It works just fine. Okay, still on what I like. The blade. Sheep's foot blade, unusual shape. What's good about a sheep's foot? There's a very distinct and useful scoring point there. So if I ever want to run the edge of the knife down something like against a ruler to score, slicing a piece of paper against a straight edge, for example, it works really well for that. M390 steel is wonderful steel. The other thing I'll give them credit for is the grind on the blade is very sharp out of the box, but something else I really appreciate is that it is perfectly symmetric. Measured the bevel angle on both sides, and it is basically identical. It happens to be 24 degrees, but it's 24 degrees on both sides. With so many production knives, it'll be 20 on one side and 24 or 25 on the other. This one is as identical as I can measure. Now, does that matter? Not really. I mean, obviously, it doesn't matter at all in terms of its ability to cut things. But it's still something I pay attention to for a couple of reasons. One is it's a sign of attention to detail. I mean, the fact that they bothered to get it right really impresses me. Plus, it does matter. Eventually, when the knife becomes dull and I go to sharpen it, I sharpen with a guided system. I use a KME system. And when both sides are the same bevel, it makes the sharpening a lot easier. Yeah, because, well, if they're not the same bevel, then I'm going to have to change one of the bevel sides in order to get it to come out the same, which makes things harder work, take longer, and throws away more metal. So the fact that it's symmetrically beveled makes sharpening a lot easier when it comes around to that. I like it being comfortable. I already mentioned that, but not just the micarta, but the shape is very comfortable. It fits the hand well, good finger grooves there. The clip just happens to fit perfectly between my fingers there, so there's no hot spot. So it's just a very comfortable knife to hold and use. And I mentioned, it is small and light, so it's very pocket friendly. What I don't like? Well, let's start with the same thing I liked. I don't really like the micarta scales. What don't I like about it is it looks unfinished. The edges are getting a little ragged and little fibers sticking out here and there for abuse, and that looks pretty cool on blue jeans. But on a knife, it's degrading its gentleman's pocket jewelry function. Not that it is really trying to be that. So the rough micarta looks a little unfinished, and it has another disadvantage as well, which we'll talk about the clip. First of all, I don't really like that the clip is shallow carry. I prefer deep. But what I don't really like about this thing is it is really hard to get on and off the clip. If I want to slide that onto my pocket, well, the clip is very tight, but not only is it tight, it's pressing down on very coarse micarta. That is a very high friction surface. So tight clip pressing on high friction surface means it is very difficult to get this thing onto a pocket and get it off the pocket. Finally, a couple of things I don't like about the blade. Well, first of all, I don't really find sheepsfoot blades attractive. Second, there's no belly, and for a lot of cutting chores, a belly is very useful. And finally, it's not very piercy. Now, a blade being too piercy becomes stabby, and it loses marks looking like a weapon. This certainly doesn't look like a weapon, but it really isn't a very piercy blade, for poking through cardboard to start a cut, that kind of thing. Final thing I'll mention about the blade is when the knife is closed, there's a lot of blade showing there. Compare that to something like, I don't know, the Kaiser Feist, where there's almost no blade showing. There's a hell of a lot of metal sticking out. I just think that makes it look a little, I don't know, weird. So there are some things like that I don't care for. None of that is mechanical or quality. It's beautifully done. So, I don't know, all over the map on likes and dislikes. I like it. Let's do my ratings, in fact. So we'll start with the NTGK rating, the non-threatening gentleman's knife, and we'll start with NTE for non-threatening. Well, the good news is the mechanism. The mechanism is something you can open slowly. You can open it two-handed, which is very important for being non-threatening. You can open it slowly, one-handed, which is very good for being non-threatening. And it's very quiet. I'm just going to bring it up closer to the microphone here. Very little clunk when you open it, where with some knives, you flick them open and they go whack and really draw attention to themselves. This does not do that. This is a very quiet and subtle knife, so that's pretty good for being non-threatening. The blade, as we mentioned a moment ago, it isn't pointy and it doesn't look stabby. It looks like a tool. That's a message I like to project. This is a tool I have with me, not a weapon. The coarse micarta is sort of soft and informal looking, so that diffuses its threateningness a little bit as well. The bad news is the chunky blade is a little intimidating, especially even when it's closed. It's blade. So that's a little bit intimidating for non-threatening. I'd give it an A overall, though, as non-threatening. For the gentleman's knife, it's not going to do as well, and because it's not trying to be. The good news is the boutique brand. It's small manufacturer, not easy to get, long waiting time. You waited 8 months to get a knife, that kind of thing. Very minimalist. Very little blade writing, for example. On the spine we have Vero. Hidden down in here somewhere, there it is a serial number, and that's it. Oh, and the nice elegant Vero logo on the clip. So minimalist writing, which I like. Great manufacturing, very high quality tolerances, which feels good for a gentleman's thing. High-end materials that are interesting. It's very pocket friendly, and for a gentleman's knife that's important. It's light, so it doesn't weigh down the pocket a lot. And it has a sort of a comfortable, casual blue jeans appearance. It doesn't really go with satin dress pants, but it goes quite nicely with, jeans and sport jacket type dress. The bad news as a gentleman's knife is the shallow carry clip, the fact that it's so damn hard to get on and off the pocket, and of course the coarse micarta is both interesting looking but not very decorative. Especially when it gets older, it starts to fray. It's going to not look especially decorative. I'd give it a B+ as a gentleman's knife. And so overall, I'm going to give it an A as a non-threatening gentleman's knife. Now, how about the KN rating? What will my knife nerd friends think? Well, they're going to like it a lot. I mean, a lot of the same things we said before. It's a boutique brand. It's a Vero. Knife nerds know Vero. They know they're hard to get. M390 steel, interesting micarta. Quite a unique opening mechanism. So I think they'd like a lot about it. And in fact, I really can't think of any cons. I'm going to give it an A+ as a knife nerd rating. And finally, the cut myself rating. I'm going to give it an A because I have never cut myself. Now, I will say that I open it two-handed most of the time. With my oversized and arthritic hands, opening it one-handed is a little dangerous. I'm getting very close to blade edges there. And I never use its front flip capability. As long as I am true to those habits, I don't expect to ever cut myself. So we'll give it an A. And that kind of, I should mention one thing on the cut myself rating. I should have mentioned it and don't like. It does suffer from a problem that many liner locks suffer from, which is I disengage the blade, I start closing, and my thumb is in harm's way there. Nothing is going to stop the blade from contacting my thumb. Where with, for example, a front flipper, a side flipper, there's a flipper tab there that can, in a good design, act as a thumb guard. So I have to be very careful with this. Haven't cut myself yet, so it's going to get an A. But I wouldn't be surprised if I do. Anyway, that brings us to the end. In summary, these are unique. I have a couple of Veros. Nothing else in my collection looks like a Vero knife. They are really unique. This particular one is very pocket friendly. It's small and light. It definitely looks like you are carrying a tool and not a weapon. I like that. And the very coarse micarta gives it an ultra casual look and feel. Very much a casual Friday knife, and for that purpose I like it a lot. I'm glad you came. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.